So I wanted to do a deeper delve into Dave and Vinny's world for you. And obviously Ken is okay, good. All right, so everyone's cool with it. But yes, at least if anyone misses anything, we can go back and do it. Hi, Kirst. So without further ado, I'll start. So I haven't really got a story for this yet. I've just called it Ken for now. So this is Ken part 1, arrival on the estate. Ken Fletcher stood at the edge of the Longcroft Estate, the damp Yorkshire morning clinging to his coat like an unwelcome memory. The sprawling grounds stretched out before him, a patchwork of overgrown hedges and neglected gardens that whispered tales of better days long past. He took a deep breath, the crisp air filling his lungs with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. This was his fresh start, a stark contrast to the polished courtrooms and stern faces of Leeds, where his life had unravelled. Ken had been a respected solicitor in Leeds, his name synonymous. Well, that sentence actually started 2 decades earlier. Ken had been a respected solicitor in Leeds, his name synonymous with integrity and sharp legal acumen. His career had been on a steady ascent until the scandal erupted like a rogue wave, pulling him under with accusations of malpractice tied to a senior partner's deceit. The firm's sudden dissolution left him adrift, his reputation tarnished overnight. Friends distanced themselves and clients vanished, leaving Ken to grapple with the fragments of his former life. His solemn vow never to practice law again ringing heavy in his ears. Hi folks, welcome in. For those that have just come in, I am doing a 5-part story, which is Ken's backstory. For fans of the Longcroft Estate. Those who don't normally listen to my Dave and Vinny stories may well still find this entertaining. Now the trouble is, when I'm reading, obviously I can't really address people in the chat as well as I might normally, so please bear with me. So that's the first couple of paragraphs underway. When the opportunity to purchase the Rampant Horse pub arose, it was both a lifeline and an anchor. The pub, a venerable establishment on the estate's periphery, had been the heart of the community for decades. The previous landlord, a jovial man named Arthur, was retiring, offering the pub at a price that seemed both a blessing and a curse. Ken saw it as a chance to escape the shadows of his past, to rebuild in a place where his former life held no sway. As he approached the pub for the first time, the wrought iron sign swaying gently above the doorway, Ken felt a pang of doubt. The Longcroft Estate was known for its rough edges, a stark contrast to the orderly suburbs of Leeds. The pub itself stood as a solitary beacon amidst the untamed landscape, its stone facade weathered by years of Yorkshire rain and the laughter of generations of pub regulars. Inside, the Rampant Horse exuded a warm, albeit slightly worn, charm. Wooden beams crisscrossed the ceiling, and the scent of aged timber mingled with the faint aroma of brewing ale. Hi, Lane. The bar, a sturdy structure polished by time, beckoned him to step into this new chapter. He could already imagine the late-night conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the camaraderie that filled the room. Ken pushed open the heavy door a small bell announcing his arrival. It would be the first thing to go, he decided. The interior was dimly lit, the flickering fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls, adorned with memorabilia from years gone by. A handful of regulars sat scattered around, their faces etched with the stories of the estate. Among them was lecherous Lee, a perennial presence, with a penchant for inappropriate jokes. And Vinny, a bachelor whose dog Scraps was a fixture by his side, even inside the pub. The former owner had talked fondly of some of the regulars at length during their 2 meetings. Ken approached the bar, meeting the gaze of the grizzled bartender, who seemed to embody the very soul of the place. The man's eyes, sharp and assessing, lingered on Ken before softening ever so slightly. "You must be the new owner," he remarked, his voice gravelly but not unkind. "Ken Fletcher," he replied, extending a hand. The bartender shook his hand firmly before introducing himself. "My name's Ken too, Ken Morgan." A moment of shared identity sparked a flicker of connection between them. "If you need anything, just give me a shout." Ken nodded, absorbing the atmosphere. The pub was alive with the subtle rhythms of everyday life. Quiet conversations, the scrape of chairs, and the occasional burst of laughter. It was a far cry from the sterile corridors of his former profession, but there was something comforting about the authenticity of this place. As the day wore on, Ken immersed himself in the routines of the pub. He learned the taps, the favourite orders, and the peculiarities of each regular. Dave, a married man who lived just across the railway lines, and Vinny, the ever-playful bachelor, became his immediate companions. Their banter was sharp and relentless, a stark contrast to Ken's initially reserved nature. Yet beneath the surface, Ken found himself intrigued by their dynamic and the vibrant life that thrived within these walls. "I know, love, I know." Croaky voice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the estate was cloaked in twilight, Ken sat alone at the bar, nursing a pint of bitter. The events of the past months played through his mind, each decision, each sleepless night spent contemplating his new role. The pub had been more than just a business venture. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could redefine himself away from the ruins of his legal career. The silence was interrupted by the familiar clink of Scrap's collar as the dog padded up to his stool, seeking attention. Ken reached down to pat the scruffy mutt, a small gesture that felt surprisingly natural. Vinny leaned against the bar, a grin playing on his lips. "Scraps has better manners than half the punters we get round here. I inherited him from his former owner who passed away. Old Pete was a regular here too. He's a good lad, keeps the place lively," said Ken. Dave joined them, a warm smile softening his usual serious features. "You know, Ken, despite the rough edges of the estate, there's a certain amount of charm here. People are loyal, and they appreciate a good pub." Ken nodded thoughtfully. "I'm starting to see that. It's different from Leeds, but maybe that's not a bad thing." As the weeks turned into months, Ken began to shed the layers of his former self, revealing glimpses of the man he used to be beneath the gruff exterior. The Longcroft Estate, with its unrefined beauty and resilient inhabitants, had a way of breaking down his barriers. He found solace in the simple routines, opening the bar each morning, tending to the little garden behind the pub, and sharing stories with the regulars. One particularly stormy night, as rain pelted the windows and the wind howled through the hedgerows, Ken found himself reflecting on his journey. The turmoil of his past seemed distant now, the estate's rugged landscape, mirroring the resilience he was slowly cultivating within himself. He realised that much like the weathered stones of the Rampant Horse, he too was becoming something enduring, shaped by the elements of his new life. Ken's transformation was not instantaneous, but it was steady. The initial reluctance to engage gave way to genuine connections, each interaction peeling back another layer of his hardened persona. He discovered a sense of purpose in the pub's daily operations and a deeper understanding of community and belonging. The estate, once a symbol of exile, became a place of refuge and renewal. However, his mask, the gruff exterior, seemed a good fit, so he allowed it to stay. One afternoon, as Ken was rearranging the shelves behind the bar, Sandra walked in, her presence as striking as ever. With her sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude, she was both a challenge and a comfort. Ken had hired her a year after opening the pub, recognised the need for someone who could handle the more difficult aspects of the job. Over time, their professional relationship had blossomed into a mutual respect, underpinned by moments of shared laughter and understanding. "Need a hand there?" Sandra called out, noticing Ken's meticulous organisation. He glanced up, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Always room for an extra pair of hands round here." And they worked side by side. Ken felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. Sandra's presence was a reminder that even in the roughest places, kindness and camaraderie could flourish. Together, they transformed the pub into a welcoming haven, a place where everyone felt at home despite the estate's rugged reputation. The secret Ken harboured, one that he kept buried deep within, remained unspoken. A fragment of his past that he wasn't ready to confront, a shadow that lingered at the edges of his new life. But the Longcroft Estate, with its honest struggles and unwavering spirit, had given him something he hadn't realised he was missing. A chance to heal, to grow, and to find peace amidst the chaos. As the years passed, Ken became an integral part of the estate's fabric. The Rampant Horse thrived under his stewardship, a testament to his resilience and adaptability. The initial isolation he felt upon the arrival gave way to a sense of belonging, each day reinforcing his decision to leave Leeds behind. The estate's roughness, once daunting, became a source of strength, shaping Ken into a pillar of the community. A pillar of the community was Vinny's usual wording. On clear evenings, Ken would stand outside the pub, gazing out over the estate with a contented sigh. The railway lines, which once symbolised the boundary between his old and new lives, now felt like a bridge. He'd built a new existence here, one rooted in authenticity and connection. The journey had been arduous, but the rewards were immeasurable. In the quiet moments when the pub had emptied and the stars twinkled above the Yorkshire sky, Ken allowed himself to reflect on how far he had come. The man who'd arrived at the estate 20 years ago was transformed, no longer defined by his past, but by the life he'd chosen to create. The Rampant Horse was finally home. Ken's arrival on the Longcroft Estate marked the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with challenges and triumphs, heartache and joy. It was a place where he could finally lay down the burdens of his former life and embrace the simplicity and honesty the estate offered. As he looked around the familiar surroundings, Ken felt a profound sense of gratitude. Here, amidst the rough beauty of Yorkshire, he'd found a place in the world, a place to call home. But the shadows of his past were stirring, and all would not always be well within the Rampant Horse. So that, guys, is part 1 of a 5-part story. And you really will have to listen